Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Marla. I'm a registered holistic nutritionist and homeopathic practitioner. And today I want to talk about gastric ulcers, share a little bit of information about where they stem from, and then of course share some remedies that can help if you are suffering with this. Of course, always check with your doctor before taking any tips, recommendations, or supplements. So gastric ulcers are typically caused by an underactive stomach called hypochlorhydria. Most people believe it's because they have too much stomach acid and it's creating these ulcerations, but that's usually not the case. So it's usually, the etiology is usually not having enough stomach acid. This kind of creates some stomach stress or inflammation, which reduces the resistance of the mucosa in the stomach, the gastric mucosa. And then this causes decreased mucosal protection. So things like H. pylori and other pathogens can thrive. When you have high stomach acid or a good amount of stomach acid, parasites and pathogens and things that we come in contact with all the time get killed off. So the less stomach acid we have, the more we are susceptible to developing things like H. pylori and parasites and other things. Specifically, H. pylori and other types of bacteria can obviously penetrate that mucosal barrier, and then that can form ulcerations as the stomach is exposed to stomach acid. A few other things that can cause gastric ulcers would be duodenal reflux. So the duodenum is the part that connects the stomach to the small intestine. So there's that duodenum, and that's where the bile is typically released when food leaves the stomach. And the bile neutralizes the stomach, the food coming from the stomach, and the stomach acid, so it's not irritating the colon. If you have reflux of bile coming from the duodenum back up into the stomach, which can be caused by poor vagal motor outflow, you lose your peristalsis or the downward motion, so you have things coming upward. So if you have that bile coming up into the stomach, that can also cause some ulcerations, as the stomach is not meant to be super alkaline, which bile is, and then it could irritate, break down the mucus, irritate the mucus, reduce stomach acid, and then cause ulcerations. There's a couple other causes. Now, when people say I'm super stressed and that's causing my ulcers, where that comes from is when we're stressed out, blood is shunted away from our digestive system and sent to our heart and our brain and our extremities for fight or flight response. So you lose the stomach acid secretion abilities and you end up with an underactive stomach. So that's how stress can play a role here with ulcers, if you were wondering about that. Okay, I have my notes here just to keep me on track and keep the video concise. So specifically, I want to talk about H. pylori. This specific microbe has an alkaline mantle. It kind of protects, this pathogen protects it from stomach acid. So that this alkaline protective layer protects it from stomach acid. This allows it to kind of burrow into the mucosal lining, which is supposed to be protecting our stomach from pathogens and irritation. And it kind of releases this cytotoxin that damages, it can cause cell wall damage. It damages the cell wall. The damage to the cell wall elicits an immune response, and obviously inflammation with that. It reduces the gastric mucosal protection or production as well. So we have these cells in our stomach that produces mucus to protect itself. So it loses that ability. The goblet cells that are normally producing mucosa are no longer doing that, and it makes the mucosa very vulnerable to hydrochloric acid damage. So again, you have this pathogen like H. pylori, it's nice and alkaline, shell is protecting it from the stomach acid, so it's hard to destroy. It burrows into the wall of the stomach, releases a toxin that prevents the goblet cells in the stomach from making that mucosal barrier to protect the stomach. So now the stomach is more susceptible to being hit by acid and getting inflamed. And then you end up with your stomach being really sensitive to any acid secretion in the stomach, because now there's no alkaline layer protecting it, so it's just really sensitive. It also increases acid production and allows acid secretions to persist after a meal. H. pylori will also increase the risk of gastric ulcers because of this. And if you have H. pylori, your risk of developing duodenal ulcers is also up by fivefold essentially. So H. pylori disturbs, I'm just reading from my notes here, it disturbs acid and enzyme balance so much that digestion is affected and dysbiosis is created. So again, like I mentioned earlier, the digestion begins in the stomach. If we have really bad stomach digestion, if we have bad secretion of stomach acid and poor enzyme secretion, it's going to affect our digestion, which then allows and kind of pushes forward the proliferation of bacteria that we have in the gut, causing dysbiosis. So there's a greater likelihood of developing cancer as well. Dental plaque is actually the reservoir of this and many other pathogens. So if you have a lot of dental plaque, that's actually reservoir and it's coming from the pathogens. So just to put that there as well, pathogens that live in the gut are in the mouth and vice versa. All right, so what can we do? One thing I actually want to touch on that a lot of people maybe don't know is specifically around NSAIDs. So non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, which are, I think, given out way too common and frequently for, situations where they might not be as needed. But a large number of gastric ulcers are actually caused by taking NSAIDs. They irritate the stomach, they cause inflammation, they create histamine release, excess acidity, so all kinds of imbalances, and they also increase the mucosal permeability. So this mucosal layer we have in our stomach, which should be strong and protecting us from pathogens and everything else, it's becoming more permeable. So stomach acid, pathogens, things can penetrate it and then affect the stomach lining as well. So NSAIDs are definitely not something you want to be taking long-term or chronically, and be very careful if you are to take them. All right, so what can we do? I want to start with diet here. Diet is really important because you can take all the supplements or medications you want. If you are not having your diet corrected, it's going to be hard to manage ulcers. Another thing is that a lot of people will take like Tums or something really alkaline to try and improve the ulcers, and that might not be the best thing, because if you have an underactive stomach, you want to be very careful with diminishing more of the stomach acid. So there's a few things you can do naturally without stopping acid secretion. You can do things to coat the stomach, and that's where diet can be really helpful. First of all, it's a must to avoid any coffee, caffeine, stimulants, alcohol, anything that's very irritating and acidic. You also obviously want to avoid sugar. Not only will this feed pathogens that are in the stomach, but it also is very irritating to that mucosal barrier in the gut and in the stomach, and can cause more inflammation and irritation. Drink a lot of water. Definitely increase fiber intake. So I highly recommend like a psyllium or chia seed or flaxseed combo, or individually. This will really help to kind of bring more fluid to the stomach, create more of like a barrier, and help to regulate digestion. You want to avoid anything inflammatory, so like canola oils, seed oils, things like that. So just eat like really clean oils, avocado, coconut, olive oil, and then focus on a lot of really easy to digest foods. So my recommendation is kind of eating like, not like you're a baby, but picture how babies eat, where things are pureed, they're cooked really well, they're steamed or softened or blended or pureed. They're not requiring a ton of strain to break down. And the stomach, when there's ulcers, you want to minimize strain and burden on the stomach. So for example, don't have a steak. Instead, if you want beef, slow cook some kind of beef. And so that way it's like falling apart and super soft, or have a ground beef, something that is really already broken down, much more easier to digest. So the stomach is not having to strain so hard. The stomach is the main site of digestion for protein because of the acid. So if you were to eat a protein, majority of the digestion occurs in the stomach. You just want to be really careful with not burdening the stomach by eating a big piece of steak or something like that. So slow cooked meats, things like that are great. You want to avoid anything that irritates the stomach and that would stimulate hydrochloric acid secretion. Some things that will directly stimulate hydrochloric acid secretion is large amounts of animal protein in one meal, acidic foods like lemon or apple cider vinegar, and spicy foods. Also, peppermint tea or peppermint in general should be avoided, as that also stimulates stomach acid. Something that's really beneficial is actually cabbage juice. This is like an old remedy that has been used for so long, and potato juices as well, to kind of help. They contain glutamine and they help kind of coat the stomach and build up that mucosal barrier again. You also do not want to use milk to soothe the condition. It will create more issues in the long run. And if you are needing support, say you have excess hydrochloric acid and you need to dampen that, you can have water. Water will dilute excess hydrochloric acid, okay? So that is a good remedy versus like Tums or something like that. If you add too much volume though to the stomach, so too much water or food, it's going to overflow the stomach and come back up, and you'll end up noticing you have heartburn. So just be careful with that. All right, so those are some dietary recommendations. Just eating lots of alkaline foods, soothing foods that are soft, pureed, broths, things like that. Just be careful not to have spicy or acidic food or too much animal protein in one meal, as these all stimulate stomach acid secretion, and do not have peppermint. Supplements, what can we do? Number one, L-glutamine. Unless you have cancer or your doctor says not to, L-glutamine is a fantastic supplement. It's the number one supplement or amino acid used by the cells throughout our whole digestive tract to, it's kind of like the fuel for the cells in our digestive tract. So they use the glutamine to form new cells. We need that. So glutamine will help build up that mucosal barrier and fix that stomach lining. My next absolutely favorite supplement is going to be a marshmallow root. Marshmallow root literally is like thick. It will coat the stomach and kind of protect it from acid irritating the ulcerations. So marshmallow root is fantastic. Also, essential fatty acids, they are antihistaminic. They reduce inflammation, and they also can help regulate HCl or hydrochloric acid secretion. So a cod liver oil is a fantastic option. Probiotics I recommend, as they inhibit pathogens and microbes in the gut, which we want if you have H. pylori. So getting a really good multi-strain probiotic is a great idea. Manuka honey is also fantastic. I use this with a lot of clients. I'm like, take some Manuka honey. It helps regenerate the mucosal and goblet cells in the stomach to regulate that mucosal secretion. Manuka honey boosts the immune system. It's very soothing. It's got a lot of nutrition. So a little bit of Manuka honey is great. Just make sure you're getting a good high quality one. Also to mention, honey is antibacterial, so that's helpful. Specifically Manuka honey, it's produced from the Manuka tree in New Zealand. It's like a tea tree essentially. The honey contains large amounts of antibacterial properties from this tree, and it contains large amounts of peroxide, which is produced by bees. So you're getting like that antibacterial. We all know tea tree oils are like really antibacterial. So Manuka honey has that same kind of effect. Now, there is colloidal silica. Now, this is something I will use with some clients. Just check with your doctor before using it. But colloidal silica controls inflammation and renews the mucosa and the immune cells. It also kind of interferes with the attachment of the H. pylori microbe onto the stomach wall. So it can kind of inhibit it attaching to that mucosal lining in the stomach. A couple other things I would really recommend is going to be olive leaf. Olive leaf is a beautiful herb that you could use to try and target and kill H. pylori, but it also is a natural antibacterial immune boosting supplement, so it can help your immune system come in and kill things off for us too. Some people will use oregano. I'm not a huge fan. It does work on H. pylori, but I find it so strong it can also irritate in the long run. A couple other things to consider would be vitamin E, zinc, and selenium, and even a B complex, as these are going to help with that mucosal healing. Your mucosal lining needs a lot of these nutrients to regenerate, so it could help just boosting that. A couple botanicals. So I already mentioned marshmallow root. A lot of people will use curcumin or ginger or even a boswellia. All are fantastic options, and they all can help to naturally reduce inflammation in the stomach, and therefore help improve the burning sensation. Yucca or yucca, so it depends how you pronounce it, Y-U-C-C-A, is also a really great tincture you could use as well for that. You could also do chamomile. I love chamomile tea. It's incredibly soothing on the stomach. Now, last couple things, plant gels like aloe vera. Oh my goodness, I'm obsessed with this one. So if you can get your hands on a real fresh aloe leaf from your grocery store, that's the best. Just cut out the gel and eat the gel. If you can't, you can buy an aloe vera supplement, either in capsule form or in a liquid form. But aloe vera is incredibly soothing and regenerating and anti-inflammatory and antibacterial for your stomach. I already mentioned marshmallow root. Slippery elm is another one that's so anti-inflammatory. I usually use it with my IBS clients because it's so anti-inflammatory, but it can also be used on ulcers and in the stomach. Licorice root's great as well. The only thing is licorice root should not be taken by certain people depending on your hormonal imbalances, so just be careful with that one. Reishi and echinacea and astragalus are great to take to boost your immune system. And those are my recommendations. So I hope that this helps. If you guys have any questions, you can leave them in the comments down below. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you in my next video. Bye.